Hi friends. So in this session, I shall be speaking to my old friend Stefano Aldigheri, with whom I had previously also had some talks. Stefano, as all of you know, is an Italian-born American designer and branding and marketing expert who spent most of his life in the world of denim. He worked with Levi Strauss in San Francisco as design director, Seven for All Mankind, and Hudson Jeans in Los Angeles as creative director, co-founded Tough Com Clothing with Bob Marley's family, and for the last years has collaborated with some of the major apparel manufacturers, brands, and retailers worldwide. He's a strong participant in the movement to clean up our industry since many years. And then, like all of us, a lot of changes taking place in everybody's life. So he has also shifted from US to Italy recently. So hi, Stefano.
Hello, Sandeep. Hello, I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to participate again to your show.
How are you
We're
back?
alive and we're
You are
healthy.
now back into your homeland. So that's wonderful.
Well, homeland, that's kind of a fluid concept. I spent most of my life outside this country, and so to me, home is a very fluid concept. Like I said, right now, I still feel that my home is California. I'll have to adjust here again, and we'll see how it goes. But after 4 years of the Trump virus that destroyed the US and made it far less attractive, it's good to be back in Europe.
That's good, Jushin. So, Stefano, what is your expectation for the next, let's say, 6 months or 8 months for the industry with so many changes taking place?
We spoke about 6 months ago about what we felt that the big impact was of the crisis that we were just about to start.
It was a wonderful
Yeah.
chat. It had so much, people liked it so much. And what do you think has changed in 6 months, and what is really going to change in the next 6 months?
We had kind of some high hopes. We were hoping that people would change their attitude towards consumerism, that they would realize that there are different priorities in life, that they would spend less maybe or spend in better products. And I think a lot of people are doing that. But at the same time, there are some signs that kind of dampen my optimism a little bit. We saw when Primark reopened a few weeks ago after the lockdown in the UK, there were people lined up all night. They were camping outside the store all night, trying to be first in line to go and buy fast fashion goods. So that's not exactly a great sign. Also, last week on the papers, I was reading that Boohoo, again in the UK, was having phenomenal growth right now. And that's in spite of the fact that only a few weeks back, they were again on the front page of all the papers for all the abuses of the workforce in the sweatshops in Leicester where they produce many of their garments. So I don't know, it looks like people sometimes will tell you one thing when they get interviewed. They will say, I want to buy ethical, I want to buy sustainable, I will pay more for sustainable. But then when they actually end up in the store and that they are buying stuff, they forget all about it. They don't even ask questions. They don't try to figure out what they're buying, where it's made, how it's made. And then they just go and buy the cheapest thing they can find. So that's a little disappointing, but I think slowly but surely we will get there.
Yeah, it looks like because right now, even when I look around me in what's selling, it's always the lowest price items which are selling. Discounted prices, discounted items. That it's the price which is ruling, the market right now. So let's hope. I also remain optimistic about it. Maybe in the long run, as you said,
Yeah.
things be different. And when we look at the different aspects of the industry, let's say starting from fibers. So what impact do you see on the fibers in the coming time?
Let's talk about all the different elements that make up the supply chain for denim. First, of course, is the fiber. And the king of fiber in denim is, was, and will always be cotton. So there's no big change there. Of course, we have a lot of different components, different fibers being used today, but cotton is still number one. A couple of things that happened in this few months. One is that finally all the horrors that are happening in the Xinjiang region in China are being exposed. We know there are hundreds of labor camps there where slave labor is being used to grow cotton. So that's going to introduce an interesting dynamic for many brands and retailers who buy a lot of fabric from the region, because they have to decide whether they want to do the right thing or if they want to close an eye and pretend that nothing is happening. We had the same situation a few years ago with Uzbekistan when we found that child labor was used to pay cotton. Then the reaction was pretty much the same everywhere, and people decided to stop buying cotton from Uzbekistan. Now the big question is, how do we know that we're not? Because we don't really have a very widely adopted system to trace where our fiber is coming from. And so if we don't know, we really are exposed to some potential problems.
Tracing system, okay. I mean, maybe we can come to that later on. But my question, I wanted, the tracing system has been started in some ways. The blockchain technologies are being used. So we can speak about after you complete that. I mean, how much time really do you think? Let's say, how many years down the line we can look at that? The entire cotton could be kind of covered with this tracing system.
Yeah, tracing is most important. Without tracing, without transparency, we really cannot talk about sustainability. It becomes a big greenwashing exercise. There are companies out there that are promoting and that are developing pretty good and sophisticated tracing systems. It's a matter of it being adopted, and if the retailers or the brands wanted it adopted, it could happen really quickly because the technology is there. It's again a matter of whether they really want to practice what they preach, or if they rather pretend that they are relying on the supplier, and then when the problem hits, they would say, "Oh, I had no idea. I was trusting the supplier. He signed the paper. He signed the declaration. All my documents are in order." So it's a matter of trying to practice what you preach. And if you're claiming to be sustainable, if you're claiming to be ethical, then you have to do the right thing, and you have to use the technology that is now available. Other fibers. The next big one, of course, is polyester. And I think by now my attitude towards polyester. I wish it was never invented. I wish we never had to use it, especially in denim. But it's there, and we have to deal with it. The one thing that bothers me a little bit is the fact that people pretend that when they use recycled polyester, they are actually helping the environment. Well, they may think so, but there are several issues associated with polyester. One, of course, is that it's coming from oil, from a fossil fuel, and it's definitely not a sustainable or renewable source of energy. The second issue that I have with this so-called environmentally friendly recycled polyester coming from PET bottles is the fact that by doing that, we're taking away the recycled fiber from its intended circular loop. The bottles should be recycled into new bottles, not be used for a fiber that goes into garments that will not be able to be recycled or be reused. Because when you introduce polyester in a blend, that it's going to be virtually impossible to recycle the fabric at the end of the life cycle of the garment. So maybe well-intentioned, but in reality, we're not really doing a great thing by using recycled polyester.
Find that when we are turning the plastic bottles into fibers, we are also increasing the possibility of these fibers going into the oceans as microfibers. That possibility is not ruled out at all.
Of course, the microfiber issue is huge. We have millions of tons of plastic already in our oceans, and not all of it, of course, but a lot of it is coming from garments. And every time we wash the garment that has polyester or synthetics, we shed in millions of particles of microfiber that will end up in the ocean, and then in the fish, and then eventually in us as well if we eat fish. So that's an issue that is becoming increasingly important, and we have to put an end to it. So reducing the amount of polyester that we use is certainly the right thing to do. I wish people were using more of the Ingeo fiber, the one that is produced from corn instead of oil. But we'll see. It's still early days. There are hopefully other ways to replace polyester with some other fiber. Tencel would be a great one, for example. Tencel is very strong. It's cellulosic, and so it can be recycled at the end of the life cycle of the garment. And as long as you don't use old forest to procure the cellulose, then it can be a very responsible fiber. It's very strong. It offers great features to the garments. It blends with pretty much any other fiber, and it's a very, very good fiber for denim. So I wish people were using more of that in the future. Next one that I'd like to talk about is hemp, which of course is a very ancient fiber, but for some reason it's becoming relevant again today. And people are talking more and more about this. It's a very good candidate to reduce our dependence on cotton, I think. And hopefully people will start adopting it more and more. And finally, we need to talk about stretch. And again, you know, I'm not a big fan of stretch. I don't think it's necessary in denim, but people like it and people are used to it. So we have to live with it. One of the issues that I have with stretch, of course, is that once you put the elastomer fiber, you make it virtually impossible to recycle the fabric. And also you make a garment that is not completely biodegradable because of the nature of the elastomer. Now, there are other ways. There are elastomers that are biodegradable. The one that people have been using for a while is Roika. The other one that, and I was always wondering why people were not using it, but the other one that is really interesting is natural rubber, which is obviously an organic material and will biodegrade. So I believe right now Candiani is offering some fabrics made with natural rubber for the elastomer, and I hope this will catch on because it's a promising, interesting alternative.
On the fabric side, do you see any changes in strategic approach towards development and any new trends in fabric development and creations?
On the fabric side, yes, because of what's happening, I think people will have to become smarter in the way they develop fabrics. They should start to rationalize fabric bases and have maybe fewer warps, but be more selective in what they develop, so that they can still offer a good range of fabrics without going crazy, developing a million different yarns or warps or constructions that are somewhat redundant. They will have to do it because the volumes are going to come down, but also they will have to be faster and quicker responding to customers' demand. And they have to look at their profitability too. If you have fewer products to develop, if you can rationalize your base, then you can save money, you can save waste, and you can consequently have a much better margin at the end of the day. The constructions, I don't see many big changes. It's always the same 3x1, 2x1, 1x1, maybe sateen a little bit, broken twill, but those are always, it's always the same. Again, if you have a good range of warps, you can develop any of these constructions and you can still offer a lot of flexibility to your customers. The other thing that is happening right now, because of what's out there, is this proliferation of antiviral finishes. And quite frankly, I think that's just a bit of a gimmick. It makes a nice story. It's nice to talk about it. But in reality, we don't really need the antiviral finish on our jeans. There's no way having antiviral property on our pants is going to protect us from a virus that is in the air and is coming through our mouth and our nose. So I would rather see antimicrobial finishes inside the garment, because that would actually help with the washing, with the home laundering of garments. If you limit the amount of odor generated in our garments, then you don't have to wash them so often and you save a lot of water. In reality, we always talk about the amount of water being used or wasted in denim production. And it's true, we are using a lot of it. But the biggest elements, the biggest components there are the water used to grow the fiber at the beginning of the process and the one used by the end user when they do the home laundering. So we always talk about the saving of water in the industrial laundry. We talk about saving of water in the dyeing, in the indigo dyeing. But those are the smallest components, the smallest contributors to the water usage. We save a lot more if you just don't wash your jeans as often as we normally do.
I mean, but yes, you're right actually, because but these the consumer end is really not under the control. But as you said, if the antimicrobial treatments are there, then maybe the consumers will wash less.
If you're really worried about the virus on your pants, the best way to solve that is to use those cabinets developed by Tonello, Ginologia, and probably other companies, where you put the garments inside the cabinet. They have them now in some stores, and the UV lights will eliminate all the virus and all the bacteria that is on the garment.
Factories side now, there are various factors like how much they should produce, whether they should produce higher quality products, or whether also location is become very important. Where the factory should be located. So many changes are taking place in logistics. So, what is your take on this?
The factories have challenges because we see how much they've struggled in the last 6 months. We see all the problems they had with cancellations and with basically disappearance of customers. And so they have to deal with a new reality. The volumes are going to be smaller. There might be fewer customers out there, and the customers need more flexibility, more speed. They need smaller minimum orders, and they are not going to commit to very long programs. So they have to realign their manufacturing and realize that unfortunately they're not going to produce as much as before, and they have to be more flexible in their offerings. Now, what I've seen in the last few months, and this is interesting, is the proliferation of small micro factories based much closer to the marketplace. So even in Los Angeles, where labor cost is fairly high, I see Asian companies coming to set up small factories where they can do small runs very quickly, and I would say also very environmentally responsibly because they use all the latest technologies. And this is kind of going to be something that is going to spread in many more places, I believe, because we need a mix of still bulk production made where it's more affordable, cheaper, but we also need fast response, quick delivery, fast development, and small lots, flexibility of small lots. So this is, to me, is an interesting development that we've seen in this last few months.
One interesting point which comes to my mind. Let's say we kind of went into this Corona lockdown around March, and 1 year will be completed in 2021. So during this 1 year, complete year, the production also went down drastically. So I mean, if we are able to evaluate in some way how much of the final product has gone to the landfills after this 1 year. So that might give us some indication that where we are kind of balancing out our consumption and production, because this has year has been a lot of reduction in both the sides.
Yeah, the quantities of product in the landfill should be much smaller. You're right. The one thing that might influence that, unfortunately, is the fact that because of the virus, all the trade of used garments has been stopped. And so there's really no recycling right now. So there might be more garments going into landfill right now that should not be going there. But eventually, once things settle down and the used trade can resume, then we should see more realistic numbers.
Garment design side, do you think there's a need for a more holistic approach to circularity at the design stage?
Garment design, people are talking about the garments becoming more utilitarian, more simple, maybe more practical. Yeah, I can see that. I think the one thing that should happen is that we create garments that have a longer life cycle, more longevity, probably made with better fabrics and with constructions that are stronger, and with looks that do not go out of fashion in 2 weeks. So things that we can keep and use for a longer time. The one thing that is really important here, and I really want to stress this one, is that we need to start looking at the circularity at the beginning of the design process. It's absolutely essential. If we design a product already from the get-go, keeping in mind the whole life cycle of the garment and what it's going to be at the end of its life, then we make different decisions, and then we have a much stronger influence over the materials that we use, the processes that we use, the technologies, and we create finally garments that are really environmentally responsible and, let's use the word, sustainable. This is the only way to do that.
Definitely, that is correct. And when we come to the retail side, which has been probably the biggest suffering side on the whole supply chain, what is the future outlook on that?
Retail could be the biggest loser right now. We see how many companies, how many retailers have gone out of business, and I'm afraid there's going to be a lot more in the next months, next year. We had a conversation a few weeks ago with yourself and Maurizio, and we talked about the state of retail in these times. And we mentioned that what we see today is pretty much an acceleration of a process that had already started. We knew that traditional retail was in trouble. We knew that the formula was no longer working, not as well as it did in the past. And we knew that there were alternative ways that were eroding the traditional retail. Of course, online is huge right now. It's getting bigger and bigger. If you can't go to any store for months, the only way to purchase is by doing it online. And the thing is, it's very convenient. So unless retailers figure out a way to make the shopping experience interesting and attractive again, then they will have a hard time getting customers back, because everybody wants to go back to stores right now. After months of lockdown, they all want to go out again and they all want to go and visit the stores. But we need to give people a reason to be there. We need to get them excited again about the visit to the store if we want to avoid them from just ordering from their home, from their computer. So I think in the future we're going to see the mix between the physical and digital sliding more and more towards the digital, but that doesn't mean that physical is finished. So the future is going to be more of a showroom where a brand or a retailer can show what they're about, can showcase their best product, and where customers have a chance to actually touch it with their hands. They can try it on, and then they place the order, and they don't necessarily pick it up from the store. They pick it up, they get it delivered at home.
From all these different segments and with that we talked about the whole industry, what are the key takeaways you feel if we speak about the whole industry?
Key takeaways quickly. Yes, one is the overall reduction in volume. I think that's inevitable. That's a fact, and we have to live with that. And it's probably not a bad thing. We need to start making less than before, because we were making way too much. Every 100 garments that were shipped to a store, 30 were never sold to anybody, and they would end up in the landfill. So that's a huge waste of resources, and it's also a huge financial loss for everybody. So we need to start being more intelligent in the way we produce and the way we manufacture, and we have to make less. All these brands who want to be sustainable and responsible, they should start planning towards a reduction of what they make, not what they sell necessarily, but what they make. And I'm looking forward to hear one of the leaders in the market, maybe Patagonia, Mr. Chouinard, if you're listening, Chipberg, if you're listening. I'm waiting for one of you guys to say, my plan for next year is not to increase my volume, is to reduce the volume that I produce by 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever the number is. because that is the only way to be responsible about what's going on and to be realistic. We do not need to make so much anymore. The other takeaway is, of course, the circularity. Again, if we want to be responsible, we need to start reducing the waste of resources, and we need to start planning better. And we need to reuse as much as possible all these raw materials that normally end up in the landfill, because we simply cannot afford to waste any longer. And we need to become more creative in the way we use our material. At the end of the day, we are going to lose some jobs in manufacturing because of the reduction of some of the areas. But at the same time, I see incredible opportunities for these new businesses that start working on recycling, repurposing, and developing new materials and new source of energy. So I think overall, we're all going to win at the end, and the environment is going to win more than anybody else.
That is for the retail side, and but I mean, there's also a kind of a moment where this thing is also happening C2C, consumer to consumer, where consumers are actually trading their old garments with each other. So probably that can also be one way of using the garments, old garments, and it might kind of compete with the retailers also in some way.
Actually, talking about circularity, when I was at Levi's, I offered the suggestion that we should be the ones buying back the jeans from our customers at the end of their life. There was a huge, and there still is a huge market of used Levi's around the world, and they just get sold by the ton. And I was thinking, well, why don't we buy back the jeans from our customers? We give them a discount on the new ones they buy, and then we take the used ones, the ones that are still in good condition. We just sanitize and mend, and then resell through our own stores. The ones that cannot be used, we just have them destroyed, and we reuse the fiber for new fabric. And by doing that, we also take a lot of those used garments out of the market. At the time, people were more focused on producing more and selling more, so there was really no reaction. But I'm glad to see that they're now starting to do it, and I think it's going to be a very successful initiative.
Some idea, it's like the time has to come for an idea to be really taking off, because that probably was an idea before time. But yes, it could have been implemented at the time, but still it's not too late. So thanks, Stefano, for a wonderful talk, and really enjoyed speaking about the various aspects of the industry. You covered everything from the fiber to the retail and how it's going to change. And it has been a wonderful discussion. And even last time when we had this webinar 6 months back, I think it came out with wonderful points and affecting the whole industry, and it gave a very good direction to the industry on what's happening there. So I hope that that today's talk also will give some valuable points to the industry, and we can all move towards a better direction.
Thank you so much again, Sandeep. I'm very glad to be here and very glad to share my opinions here. I know these are just my own very personal opinions. I don't claim to have a magical 8-ball or a crystal ball. I don't know the future, but these are just my observations. So hopefully people will comment, and I'm looking forward to hearing somebody's also disagreeing with my views, because that's always constructive. And just one final thing, as soon as I'm settled here, I will start looking at new projects again. Now that I'm based here in Europe, closer to the European market, and I'm closer also to Asia. So my travel schedule hopefully will be less of a nightmare as it used to be.
Your travels are always, so I would say huge and devastating. I mean, so you can, I mean, I don't know how you manage them, because it's like 30-40 hours travels at one time. So probably now it's you're in a much better location travel wise. Look forward to meeting you physically soon. It's been a long time.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you in person too. Thank you. Bye.
So much.
Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.